Transylvania, the land of Dracula, was known for its shadowy landscapes and enigmatic tales that had captured our imaginations for years. My wife, Austin, my best friend, and his wife had a tradition of celebrating Halloween in unique ways every year. This time, we chose to immerse ourselves in the legends that surrounded this fabled region. Our journey began in the heart of Transylvania on the night before Halloween. The moon, as pale as a ghost's face, cast an eerie glow upon the land. The air was thick with anticipation as we ventured into the heart of the town, known for Dracula's castle and countless tales of the supernatural. The town's narrow cobblestone streets were illuminated by flickering lanterns, their dancing flames casting eerie, elongated shadows on the centuries-old buildings. Echoes of ancient chants and songs filled the air, adding to the otherworldly atmosphere. On Halloween night, the group gathered in the town square, where a bonfire blazed and the villagers began to tell chilling tales of the area. It was during this gathering that a local, an elderly man with a knowing glint in his eye, mentioned a forbidden cave hidden in the depths of the mountains. The elderly man who shared the ominous tale about the demonic cave was a figure that sent shivers down their spines. His gnarled hands, weathered by years of toil, trembled slightly as he spoke, making it seem as though he were a vessel of the very horrors he described. His skin was etched with deep wrinkles, eternally etching the stories of a lifetime of darkness into his visage. His eyes were the most disconcerting feature of all. Deep-set and piercing, they seemed to hold secrets from centuries past. They were a peculiar shade of gray, almost devoid of color, and they appeared to see far beyond the realm of the living. As he spoke, those eyes seemed to gleam with an unnatural light, and his gaze pierced through the souls of the listeners, leaving them with an overwhelming sense of foreboding. His voice, when he spoke of the cave, was a haunting whisper, a sound that seemed to echo from the depths of some forgotten abyss. It sent shivers down their spines, as if the very words he uttered were imbued with a sinister power, binding them to the dark tale he wove. Despite the overwhelming sense of dread his story instilled, we decided to go ahead with our plan to camp in the forest that night. When we arrived at our destination in the dark forest, the Halloween night was filled with excitement and the challenge of the unknown. As we arrived in the region, we couldn't escape the feeling that we were stepping into a realm where reality and myth intertwined. The moonlight barely penetrated the dense canopy of ancient trees that loomed over us, their gnarled branches casting sinister shadows like skeletal fingers reaching for us. The forest seemed to whisper with secrets as we ventured further into its depths, and the silence was deafening in its foreboding. Strange, ghostly shapes flitted at the periphery of our vision, playing tricks on our senses. The occasional hoot of an owl or the distant howl of a wolf added to the disconcerting symphony of the night. The forest floor was carpeted with a thick layer of damp, decaying leaves that seemed to smother any sound we made. It felt as if the very earth beneath our feet held its breath, as though nature itself was waiting for something to happen, something both ancient and malevolent. We set up our camp in the shadow of the legends that enveloped us, the moon illuminating the land with its ghostly light. As we gathered around a crackling fire, our laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the chilling tales that had taken root in our minds. Intrigued by an insatiable curiosity, I ventured deeper into the enigmatic Transylvanian forest, my footsteps becoming less of a choice and more of an irresistible compulsion. The moon, a spectral guardian in the night sky, cast its eerie light upon my path, revealing the way forward with its pale, haunting glow. And then, as if drawn by an invisible force, I stumbled upon the object of our shared dread, the ominous cave. It stood before me, a gaping maw of darkness despite the moon's persistent attempts to pierce its abyssal depths. The cave's entrance seemed like a portal to a realm of terror, a gateway to the very heart of darkness. At the threshold of this foreboding cavern, I stood paralyzed. The air around me grew heavy with the scent of ancient dread, as if I were gazing into the abyss itself. The cave's shadowy maw beckoned, and I was both drawn and repelled by the sinister aura it emanated. The very essence of fear seemed to cling to the rocks, and I hesitated, torn between the urge to turn back and the overpowering curiosity that kept me rooted in place. My consciousness faded, and I awoke with my friends surrounding me, their voices calling my name unanswered. The cave, real and looming, continued to defy all reason and understanding. We returned to our camp, but the unease persisted. In the depths of the night, I heard a whisper calling my name. It was an illusion, I thought, but it persisted, growing louder, more ominous. I had no choice but to follow it back to the cave, an unseen force compelling me. Inside the cave, I succumbed to its darkness, my soul captured in a grip of agony and terror. The cave became my tormentor, my prison. I awoke in my tent, my wife's soothing voice calming me. It had all been a dream, a nightmare. Relieved, we returned to our hotel. But something had changed in me. A yearning for the darkness, a desire to remain hidden from the light. The shadows no longer frightened me. They embraced me like old friends, offering solace in their obsidian embrace. The very essence of the cave seemed to seep into my soul, intertwining with my thoughts and desires. A newfound sense of belonging washed over me, as if I had found my true home within the depths of this malevolent sanctuary. The next day we discovered that Austin's wife was missing, and our search for her led us back to the sinister Transylvanian forest. Lost in the labyrinth of my own thoughts, I was blissfully unaware of the world outside until my wife and Austin materialized before me. They brought news of a discovery, her necklace, but no trace of her. Desperation had driven us to contact the authorities, yet they too had scoured every corner of the town, leaving us with more questions than answers. We retreated to the hotel, seeking solace in the cool darkness of the backyard, where the night draped its obsidian shroud over the town, its inky blackness covering us like a heavy, foreboding blanket. We waited in torturous silence, clinging to the hope of news about her disappearance, but none came. The black veil of uncertainty hung heavy over us. With a heavy heart, Austin returned to his room, his solitude overshadowed by the colossal burden of confusion and helplessness. He was adrift in a sea of uncertainty, a ship without a captain. My wife and I retreated to our room. As she reached for the light switch, a primal fear overcame me, and I screamed at her to stop. I had no understanding of the overwhelming dread that had seized me. My wife stared at me, her confusion mirroring my own, and I quickly apologized, attributing my outburst to exhaustion. But there was no rest to be had that night. When morning arrived, we were shaken from our slumber by a blood-curdling scream that pierced the silence outside our room. We rushed into the corridor to find the hotel cleaning lady, petrified like a lifeless statue, unable to articulate her terror. We burst into Austin's room and bore witness to a scene of unimaginable horror. His body lay torn asunder, the bed drenched in blood, and the walls painted with a grotesque crimson tableau. It was a brutality beyond human capacity, an act seemingly conjured from another world. Shock silence ensued, rendering us helpless in the face of this monstrous enigma. And then, on a night that would etch itself into our nightmares, I returned to my room only to discover the same brutality inflicted upon my wife, the evidence of the malevolent presence etched into the room, the name of the entity revealed. Day after day, the town was engulfed in a plague of gruesome and monstrous attacks, each one mirroring the brutality that had befallen Austin and my wife. My nightmares deepened, and my life became a waking nightmare. Something had bound me to this accursed town, an invisible force that defied understanding. I was trapped in a desolate existence, caught in the clutches of despair. The entire town was plunged into sorrow and fear, its inhabitants marked by the specter of dread. The uncertainty of who would be next hung over us like a shroud, and the pervasive fear was etched into every pair of eyes. I stumbled back to the hotel, my mind a tumultuous whirlwind of confusion and despair. Death had spread like a haunting plague through the village, claiming not only my friends but also my beloved wife. My heart weighed heavy with the burden of loss and guilt. I staggered into the room, the weight of the events pressing down on me like a suffocating shroud. In the midst of my anguish, a deafening lightning strike shattered the oppressive darkness. The room was bathed in an intense, blinding flash, illuminating every corner for a split second. In that momentary blaze of light, the mirror on the far wall caught my eye. With a thunderous crash, the mirror seemed to come alive, reflecting a distorted image. My heart raced as I witnessed a grotesque figure, its features twisted and contorted, staring back at me. The lightning's eerie glow accentuated every monstrous detail. The elongated limbs, the ghastly complexion, and eyes that glimmered with an otherworldly malevolence. It was me, yet not me. The reflection in the mirror was a nightmarish rendition of myself, a visage so horrifying that primal fear gripped my very soul. The room seemed to shrink around me as terror took hold. The lightning flickered, casting ominous shadows that danced around the monstrous reflection. The figure in the mirror loomed larger, its unearthly form sending a chill down my spine. The horror of the sight paralyzed me, and I struggled to comprehend the ghastly revelation before me. As the lightning began to fade, the reflection wavered, as though the monstrous apparition was reaching out from behind the glass. My breath hitched in my throat, and a bone-chilling realization crept over me. I was face to face with the true horror, an embodiment of the curse that had consumed the town. The room plunged into darkness once more, leaving me shrouded in the haunting silence. But the image in the mirror lingered, burned into my mind, a terrifying specter that represented the malevolent force that dwelled within me. With a pounding heart and the weight of a ghastly truth, I retreated into the shadows, a tortured soul ensnared by the very curse I had set loose. The night echoed with the haunting echoes of my torment, a testament to the darkness that now dwelled within me. And as the town of Transylvania began to heal, unaware of the true origin of their suffering, I faded into the abyss, a prisoner of my own monstrous reflection, forever marked by the darkness I had unleashed.